Here we have a centre lathe, which you can use to create metal components that are cylindrical. This section here is called the chuck. There's a motor in here which turns this around at speed, and then you can use like a cutting tool here, and you can also use a drill or a tap in this section to then, obviously as this spins, this will drill into the centre of that particular piece of metal. We tend to use aluminium on this lathe just because that's what we do. You could take a piece of aluminium like this, a bit shorter would be ideal, but we're going to use that one for now. Pop it in. We're going to use this chuck key to do this chuck up. I'm only going to leave about that much material out of it. If you leave too much material hanging out the end that you're not working on, what tends to happen is it tends to wobble around unless you do something to make sure it doesn't do that. And just to show you, obviously a light that you can use to look at what's going on, you have a guard that comes down to stop anyone touching the chuck or anything getting caught in the chuck. Obviously health and safety wise, make sure that you removed any jewellery, anything on your wrists that might get caught. These machines can be extremely dangerous. And you need to make sure that you take every precaution to not injure yourself. We have tools up on the top section up here. Just over here we've got some tools and different bits and pieces that we might need. Down here we have our on-off button and our emergency stop button. And then we have lots of this particular model are locked off for safety reasons because this lead screw here is exposed. On more modern versions that would be covered. Ours isn't covered, so that is locked off, so it can't be used. But generally, that's kind of what we look for in our lathes. Now, generally, you would use this to face off a section of material, which I'll show you shortly. So you'd use that cutting tool there to face off the end and then the sides. You can then use the lathe to cut sections out or to resize certain sections of it to get what you need. And you can use obviously the drill at the end, which is stationary, that can then be used to drill holes into the end of the piece and to put tap and dies in it to put screw threads onto that section. So that's the general idea of what's going on. It's called the tailstock, and the tailstock locks out like this on that section, and then this wheel winds this in and out, and you can lock that off if you need to as well. We've got our carriage, which is this section here which goes backwards and forwards, and on there you have got your cross slide, which can be wheeled backwards and forwards that way, and you can use this wheel to wind it in and out depending on how you look at it. So that's kind of how it works. And this section here, which has got the tool in it, it's called the tool post. We can change out our tools for different types of tool, which we'll talk about later. And that is essentially it for now. You can change the speed of the machine for different materials that you're working on. And if you're working on particularly hard materials, you might need to use lubricant to make sure that the work doesn't get too hot that you're working on. So there we go. I'll turn it on so you can see it spin, and then we'll start the next video shortly.